What's up, everyone? My name's Jose, and welcome to Beyond the Call Finance. If you're a military service member, a veteran, or a federal employee that's looking to take control of your finances, maximize your federal benefits, and build real wealth, then you're in the right place. Listen, as a public servant myself of 10 years, my passion and my side hustle is to help federal employees and their families, much like yourself, escape debt, stack cash, and become millionaires. Does it sound impossible? Well, I'm well on my way. In just 6 years, I've crushed through $80,000 of debt, and I've built a $500,000 portfolio that's spread across real estate, index funds, and tax advantage accounts. And the best part about all of this is that my homework is repeatable, and I want you to steal it. All of my YouTube videos are going to be jam-packed with real tools and strategies on how to make all of this happen. And if financial freedom sounds like a mission that you want to be on, then hit the subscribe button and let's get to work. Now let's go ahead and dive into this next video. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of our series on personal finance, where we break down complex financial topics and we teach you how to make smarter money moves. Today, we're going to be diving into the Thrift Savings Plan, or the TSP for short. So first and foremost, what is the TSP? Well, that's a great question. Think of it as a 401k for federal employees. It's a retirement savings plan that offers low-cost investment options to help you ensure that you are financially prepared for retirement. And here are some of the highlights. Eligibility. Who is eligible for the TSP? Well, lucky for you, the TSP is available to all federal employees and uniformed service members. So if you're in any of the military service branches, like the Army, much like myself, or any of the federal branches of government, then you are eligible for the TSP. Highlight number 2, contribution options. Just like any other 401k, you have a post-tax and a pre-tax option when it comes to invest. The post-tax option is the Roth option, and you can invest in that. When you invest in the Roth option, you pay taxes up front so that when you pull your money out, when you are retired, all of that money that you're pulling out is tax-free. The other option is the pre-tax option. And so when you invest into the traditional pre-tax option, you are opting to pay taxes when you pull your money out in retirement. Either way, it is a tax advantage account that provides tremendous benefits, which is awesome. It's a win-win situation. Element number 3, government matching. This is my favorite element to the TSP that I love talking about. So if you are in the blended retirement system, which you definitely are if you join the military service after 2018, then you're eligible for government matching. And what that means is for your contributions, Uncle Sam is willing to match up to 5% of your contributions. Ladies and gentlemen, that is free money. Free money. Free money. That's awesome. Now, if you are part of the legacy retirement system, then unfortunately you are not eligible to receive the government matching. However, your pension is a little bit better than in the blended retirement system. Again, I'm going to be doing a full breakdown and a deep dive in the blended retirement system versus the legacy system in the future. If you would like to see a video like that, leave a comment below. Now that you know how awesome the TSP is, let's talk about how it actually works and how you can invest in it. First, you have to decide how much of your paycheck to contribute. Now, for the year of 2025, you're allowed to contribute up to $22,500. If you're above the age of 50, then you can also add an additional $7,500 in catch-up contributions. Regardless of how much you choose to invest in the TSP, my recommendation is always that you, at a minimum, invest 5% of your salary to make sure that you are taking advantage of the government matching. It's free money and there's no excuse why you shouldn't be getting free money. Step number 2, once you've decided how much to actually invest, then you have to decide how to invest. And this is my favorite part. We're going to finally get into the nuts and bolts of the TSP, and we're going to break down all of the funds that the TSP has available. This part's going to be interesting, and it's going to be a little eye-opening for some of you. Now, if you decided to contribute in the TSP as soon as you got into service, chances are that you basically picked the default option. The default option is called the G Fund, and the G Fund is easy to remember because G stands for garbage. It is an absolute garbage fund. The average rate of return for the G Fund has consistently been, since inception, about 4.5%, which is terrible if you consider the rate of inflation. It is barely beating the rate of inflation. Of course, the rate of inflation fluctuates from time to time, but on average, it is barely beating the rate of inflation, and sometimes it's on par with it. So the G Fund, if that is your primary fund that you're using to invest in the TSP throughout the duration of your career, that's not bueno, homie. You got to pick another fund. And let's talk about some of those other funds. Now, the TSP has 5 available funds. You have the G Fund, the F Fund, the C Fund, the S fund, and the I fund. We already talked about the G fund, the garbage fund. It's not a good one, so don't invest in it. The next one that we're going to talk about is the F fund. The F fund is the bond fund. The F fund tracks the Bloomberg US Aggregate Bond Index. And since inception, the F fund has produced an average rate of return of about 5.4%. Now, while it's not as bad as the G fund, it is certainly not great. While the F fund has its time and place in your investment portfolio, if you're a young budding investor, if you just joined the military, if you just joined your federal branch, the F fund is not for you. The recommended time to start investing in the F fund is as your portfolio starts to mature and as you start getting closer to your actual retirement age. The reason behind that is that bonds are an excellent hedge against economic downturn, and so it's really good at consolidating gains for all of the gains that you've made throughout your career. But if you're early on, you should not be considering the F fund as part of your investment. All right, so we've covered the first two, the G fund and the F fund. The last three funds are my favorite funds, and these are the funds that I recommend to every single new budding investor. The C fund, the S fund, and the I fund. Let's dive straight into my favorite fund, the workhorse of the entire fund group, and that is the C fund. As I stated, the C fund is my absolute favorite fund. It is an absolute workhorse. It is a beast of a fund because it tracks the S&P 500. The S&P 500 tracks the top 500 companies in the United States. So whenever you contribute to the C fund, you're actually spreading contributions across those top 500 companies. So you have a portion of your money invested in absolute business giants like Amazon, Google, Meta, and other companies of that caliber. And so that's why their average rate of return is a lot higher. Now, the C fund is a little bit risky, but if you are a young investor, then that is completely okay because you need to aggressively invest, and assuming a little bit more risk is completely okay. Now listen up. The reason I like the C fund is because the C fund, since inception, has had an average rate of return of 10 to 12%, which is phenomenal. As I stated, it is the workhorse of the group, and it should form the core of any good investment portfolio. All right, moving on to the next fund, the S fund. The S fund is great because it tracks the Dow Jones Index. Now, the S fund, when you invest into it, it spreads your contributions across small to mid-sized companies. They're top companies in the United States that you can't find in the S&P 500. While they're not the top 500 companies, they're certainly successful companies in their own right. With the S fund, the average rate of return is not as great as the C fund, and that's okay, right? I mean, you can imagine it's not within the top 500 companies, and so the average rate of return isn't going to be as high. What you see in the S fund is that the average rate of return has been approximately 9.5% since inception, which, while it's not as great as the C fund, is certainly respectable in its own right. And so when it comes to the S fund, I always recommend that budding investors invest in the S fund, specifically because it assists with diversifying your portfolio. Right? You don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket. And so when it comes to the S fund, it's a great fund that should always be considered by new investors. Now, last but not least, we have the I fund. And the I fund is easy to remember because the I stands for international. The I fund tracks the index that is called the MSCIEFEBCDFGHIJK. It tracks internationally developed stocks. So when you invest in the I fund, your money is being contributed across a multitude of international stocks for well-developed companies. The international fund is interesting. You know, while I don't think that it should form the core of your portfolio, I think that it is essential when it comes to diversification. When it comes to the international fund, the average rate of return since inception has been about 5.3, 5.4, which again isn't great, but for the sake of diversification, I think that it is a key fund that people should consider investing in. Now, before I make my recommendations on how you should invest in the TSP, I'm going to share some basic principles that every investor should follow when it comes to investing in the TSP. I'm going to get to my recommendations, but regardless of which option you choose at the end of the video, you should always consider these and use these as North Star guiding principles. Principle number 1, as I've already stated, always contribute enough to get the full match. The government is literally offering you free money. There's no reason to not accept that free money. And so when it comes to the TSP, regardless of how much you choose, at a minimum, you should always invest that baseline 5%. As a caveat to this, if you choose to invest in the Roth IRA option and your 5% is going into the Roth IRA option, just know that whatever government matching the government is going to give you, that is going to go into the traditional option of the TSP. And so by nature of that, you're automatically going to have a split portfolio between Roth option and the traditional option, and that's completely fine. Just make sure that you're aware of that so that you're not confused whenever you go to check on your TSP and see how it's doing. Principle number 2, take the leap. I mean, just automate it. It's very easy to automate contributions to the TSP. All you have to do is go into your MyPay and choose the actual percentage that you want to contribute to your TSP. And from there, all you have to do is go on to tsp.gov and manage your contributions as you see fit. It's very easy. The military specifically makes it super easy to contribute to the TSP and to automate that process. And honestly, that's what you want to do, right? The best form of investing isn't one that you're tracking and that you're opening the app for every single day. It's you automating the contribution, setting it, and forgetting it. You know, you really want that money to grow while you're sleeping, and that's the power of the TSP, that's the power of index funds, that's the power of compound interest. So just take the leap. The best time to invest is always today if you haven't started yet. The third principle, which I'll discuss, is diversify your investments. Now, while it is tempting to take 100% of your contributions and throw them at the C fund because it's an absolute workhorse, there is always the principle of diversification, right? Let's say the US economy completely tanks tomorrow. You know, how are you making sure that the investments that you've put into your TSP are going to weather that storm? And so diversification, which is recommended by all economists, by all finance books, you know, make sure that you're following that principle. And so regardless of how much you're choosing to invest, make sure that you're spreading it across the 3 funds that I'm gonna recommend. The fourth principle that I wanna talk about is increasing contributions over time. What you wanna avoid ultimately is not succumbing to lifestyle creep, right? As you start to make more money, what you don't wanna do is start living more lavishly. Because at the end of the day, what that's gonna do is you're gonna make more money and you're just gonna spend more money. Instead, what you should be doing is, as you're serving throughout your career year by year, increase your contribution by 1%. That is a surefire way to ensure that you are preparing yourself financially for retirement. And 1% is easy, right? That change will be minimal, and the best part about it is that it'll come out before you even receive your paycheck. The fourth principle that I'll talk about is making the most out of the TSP while you can still contribute. You know, a lot of us think 20 years, man, that's gonna be a long time. But as someone who's already served 10 years myself, I can tell you that 10 years has absolutely blazed by. And so what I'll say is be proactive. You know, time is of the essence. Invest today and make sure that you're making the most out of all 20 years of service, right? Because after you leave federal service, you're no longer able to contribute to TSP. All right, the best part of the video. Now, this is a part where I'm gonna make the recommendations to each of you on how to actually invest in the TSP. And in order to make my recommendations, I'm gonna run through a couple of scenarios, right? Scenario 1. You have stumbled on this video at the beginning of your career. You've just joined the military or you've just joined your federal branch of service. I'm jealous. First of all, kudos to you for being interested in this so early on in your career. My recommendation to you is simple, right? If you're investing in the TSP, you should focus on the top 3 funds, right? The C, S, and I fund. My recommendation on how you should split the contributions, again, is that you contribute at least 5% and that 5% is being split up across those 3 funds. The percentage that I recommend specifically is 75% for the C fund, 20% for the S fund, and 5% for the I fund. So again, that's 75, 20, 5. And that will ensure a great diversification of your portfolio, but it'll also ensure that you are aggressively investing in the fund that matters, and that's the C fund. Go C fund, go C fund, go C fund. It's awesome. So that's my recommendation. CSI, 75-25, do it. All right, so scenario 2. Let's say you're stumbling upon this video a little bit later in service, right? You're staring down the barrel of that 20-year mark and it's within reach, right? That's completely okay. Now, the average person that retires from federal service is still relatively young. You're in a young age bracket. Chances are that you're in your late 30s or you're in your early 40s. You still have plenty of time to invest. When it comes to the TSP in particular, there are a couple things that you can do when you leave federal service. The absolute best option when it comes to how to manage your TSP after you leave federal service is to roll it over into another retirement account. And so what that's probably gonna look like is an IRA, an individual retirement account. The reason I always recommend to do this is because with the IRA, you can continue to aggressively invest, right? You can still put money into the IRA, you can still contribute to the IRA, and IRAs, depending on the product and the company that you go with, track the S&P 500 similarly, which is going to contribute to that principal stacking up, and then you're gonna see the magic of compound interest over time. And so I always recommend to everyone that as you leave federal service, you roll that over into an IRA so that you can continue to invest and be aggressive in your preparation for retirement. Now, the other option is that you choose to keep your money with the TSP. If you still have about 20 to 25 years before you think you're gonna hit that retirement age, which, by the way, if you're not 59 and a half and you make withdrawals, you will be penalized for it, right? So whatever your retirement date is, it should always be after you turn 59 and a half, right? So whatever that time horizon is, if you keep your money in the TSP, allow it to continue growing. You are not going to be able to make additional contributions. However, you are going to be able to manage that split, right? And so as you start getting closer to your templated retirement age, my recommendation is that you move from an aggressive contribution mix to a more conservative contribution mix. And what that looks like is that you start to reallocate some of the money from the CS&I towards the F fund. Why? Because bonds, as I said, are great hedges against economic downturn. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to consolidate gains. Your fund has been working for you for the past 20 plus years. Chances are you have a decent amount of money in there, and what you don't want to see is that that money starts to go down. And so incorporating bonds into your investment mix is a great way of providing that hedge against economic downturn and ensuring that you consolidate those gains. And then finally, we have scenario 3, the easy button, right? If all of this sounds daunting to you, if you're kind of scared of having to manage your portfolio and picking the funds yourselves, then there's the easy button. And these are what the TSP refer to as life cycle funds. The life cycle funds are great because all you have to do with the life cycle fund is, one, choose a life cycle fund. And so what you want to do is you want to think about what your estimated retirement date is going to be, and then you pick the associated life cycle fund. So for example, if you think that you are going to retire, in 20 years, then you would pick the life cycle fund 2040, right? It's pretty simple. And so what's going to take place is that after you start investing your money into the life cycle 2040, the consummate professionals over at TSP have people that will manage that mix for you. It will be aggressive in the beginning, and it will naturally taper out to a more conservative mix as you get closer to your retirement age. So it can't get easier than that. If you don't want to mess with any of this, that's totally fine. If you don't want to be in control completely, but still have a safe option on how to invest your money and prepare for retirement, the life cycle funds are a great option. And so, it's something to consider. All right, guys, now that you know what the TSP is, now that you're aware of the funds, and now that you're aware of the recommendations that I make to investors associated with investing, let's talk about some frequently asked questions. The first question: hey, Jose, how do I access and manage my TSP? Great question. I actually alluded to it a little bit previously in the video. It's kind of a mix between your MyPay and TSP.gov, right? So when deciding how much money you want to contribute from your paycheck, for military service members, you go to mypay.com and you can manage the contributions from there. Once you've decided how much money you are going to contribute, then managing the distribution across funds is where you go to TSP.gov. Now, it might be a little bit of a process if it's the very first time that you're logging on to TSP. At least it was when I first logged on. Just a heads up, it might be a little bit difficult, but once you get it and once you finally log into TSP, make sure you keep that password and the username readily available somehow. Not out in the open for everybody to see, but make sure that it's available. Once you have consistent access to your TSP.gov account, then it's very easy to manage a distribution of funds. You can go to the allocation mix portion of the TSP website, and it has little blank spaces there for each fund, and you just put the percentage of your contribution. As long as it totals 100%, you're good to go. Next question: Jose, what happens when I leave federal service? Can I still contribute to the TSP? Unfortunately, the answer is no. After you leave federal service, you're not allowed to make active contributions to the TSP anymore. And so the money that you have when you retire is going to be the money that you have in the TSP when you retire. There are a couple options, which I already talked a little bit about. If you choose to roll that money over into an IRA, what you'll have to do first, obviously, is pick a company, pick an IRA product that you like. My recommendation is always Vanguard. That's the company that I love to use. That's the safest bet, because what you can also do is you can withdraw all of your money. Now, I know that's a tempting option to a lot of people, because you'll kind of see how much money is in there and you don't know what kind of job you're going to be able to get after you retire. But don't do that, okay? I strongly urge against doing that. And here's why. When you withdraw money from an investment account, that's known as a taxable event. Now, with any taxable event, you're subject to capital gains, which range from anywhere from 0% to 20%, depending on the overall value of what you pull out. With tax advantage accounts, i.e. the TSP, there is also a penalty for withdrawing early before the age of 59 and a half. If you are not above 59 and a half and you start making withdrawals from your TSP, you are going to be taxed 10% additionally on top of that as a penalty. And that money, that tax, will all be due come tax time the year after you make that withdrawal. Worst case scenario, you're pulling out over $600,000 and you're below the age of 59 and a half. In that instance, you will be charged 30% of that entire value come tax time. And so I strongly urge against it. That's gonna be a no for me, dog. Hey, Jose, how much should I actually have invested by the time I retire? Well, that's a great question. I'm actually going to be making a future video associated with the unique considerations that federal employees should consider when they are planning for their retirement. We have access to a pension, which is something that most Americans nowadays don't have. And so how does the pension kind of fit into that? How much should I be augmenting that pension with my retirement? And what's a good target goal for my investments? What does that look like? I'll be making an entire video here in the future associated with that very topic. And if you're interested in that, go ahead and subscribe. That way you can be notified as soon as I make that video. I want to reiterate how powerful the TSP is in securing your financial future. It is the absolute best way for any federal employee to ensure that they're preparing for retirement and ensuring that their money is growing aggressively and that they're leveraging the magic of compound interest. The last thing I want to talk about is, being a veteran is an absolute privilege, but it is difficult at times. There's a lot of stressors that are placed on the family. There are a lot of stressors that are placed on you at work. There are a lot of demands at work. One of the key principles, one of the key tenets of military service is selfless service. And so it's very draining, right? We're all individuals, we're all people, but the expectations that are placed on us in the name of service for this country, they're demanding. And so with that in mind, with veterans having already so much on their mind and so many demands placed on them, their finances can be an additional stressor. And so if you know a veteran that needs some help, that might benefit from this video, please share so that we can start taking care of veterans a little bit better as a society. I would love to hear what kind of content you want me to create. I already have about 2 years of content's worth planned, but I want to make sure that this content is falling on interested ears and that you guys as my audience have a hand in crafting the direction of this channel. So please comment. I want to hear what you want to know, and I want you guys to drive the future of this channel. If you found this video helpful, or if you know somebody that can benefit from this information, or if you just want to support your friendly neighborhood federal employees and military service members, then like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Share it as much as possible so that I can spread this message as much as possible. If you know somebody and you have a vested interest in their financial future, then give this video a share. I'm well on my way towards earning 7 figures, and I want to help as many people as possible. So please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll help veterans everywhere get ahead. Like I said, my name is Jose, and this is Beyond the Call Finance. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Please escape debt, stack cash, and become millionaires. And hopefully look good doing it, you know what I'm saying? I don't want you to just steal it. I'm giving it for free, homie. What up? Hot stuff. And become millionaires, and hopefully look good doing it. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully look good doing it. Hopefully look good doing it. My nephew would be proud of that one.